Yeah, it's great to be here in such an intimate group. I'm really looking forward for this engagement and back and forth. But I'm gonna give you some background first, and I don't know basically the touch points that you already have with the topic around design. So I'm gonna get to know that a bit better through the presentation. But I'm gonna touch the basics, and then I'm gonna tell you about my story, about Goodpatch story, and then also what's next, kind of in the field of design. And then I'll show you a little hint at the localization framework that we created, which I think in that context of internationals living in Japan, working in Japan, I think it's something that you can relate to very well. All right. The duality of design and business, those two words have not been that close when I started my professional career, but these days it's tightly knit together. And the duality, there's a symbol for that. And I very much look at these two things as closely interwoven, and I also look at myself as a person who combines this duality very much. First, I'm going to touch about what is design in general. Can somebody tell me in that room what is design from your perspective? Just shout it out. Visual?
Yeah.
Experience, okay. Anything else? Give me some more.
Way to business.
Hmm?
Way to business.
Way of business.
Way of business.
Process.
Process, okay. Thinking process. I always say design is the three questions we're asking. The first question, important question, is why are we building something? You gotta give me a good reason. Software is a little bit more like forgiving, but if you want to build a new hardware, for example, you have to have a proper reason why this product should exist in this world. Who? So who is the person we are building this for? And then how does it work? It's like, how does it work in detail? That's very much an English use of the word design. Is to design something is to think about how does something work. And this is what design is all about. What is business is the next question. So any people who can give me a quick definition of business?
Exchange of goods and services.
Yeah, value. Anything else? What is business?
Interaction between two parties for the benefit of the one or two.
Hopefully both.
Yeah.
Oh.
A give relationship. But it's definitely value creation along the things that you said. And how do you measure value? The answer is quite simple. Yes, with money. And then there's a few companies that I just want to just show you. They were built by designers. They're very fairly successful these days. There's a lot of acquisitions from consultant companies or branding holdings, tech companies of design firms during the last years. That had been like every company got bought, basically. Even companies like IDEO have sold like more than 50% to Hakomodo, and you wouldn't believe it. Then you have this increasing ratio versus designers versus engineers. So the tech companies, they didn't have as much designers as they have today compared to the ratio of engineers. This is also just one of the indicators that this is increasingly important. And then what is really important is that we understand design not just as something on the visual side and not just something like making something pretty at the end, but it's more about the sense making and about giving something a meaning and structure, and deeply ingrained also in the strategy making. So my name is Boris Jitsukata. It's a Japanese last name which I have for my wife, married for 3 years. I'm a father for the last 3 months. So that's a new situation for me, and moved to Chiba earlier this year after living 7 years in Berlin. I was born and raised in the south of Germany, lived in countries like Finland, Switzerland, and Japan, all countries with great design, and I'm currently a board director and executive officer at Goodpatch, a design firm that exists since 2013, and I was part of a teaching team at Stanford University's global course 310, teaching design thinking to students but also corporate partners. I have a master's in media design from Keio, and a master's in international management from University of St. Gallen, which is a business school. And when I was 17, when I was in my high school, I found out about design and my passion for it. And I learned about the designer chairs in school, which was really eye-opening for me. Oh, from a chair you can tell what is a design era this chair was created, what was important at that time. But then I also understood, living in Finland, overseas for 1 year, that this invention is also design. The name is quite long. It's Astian Kuivaus Kaapi, and every Finnish home has it.
Container drying also.
As an Estonian,
I'm Estonian.
you're familiar with that?
You
You also have that?
Yeah, I do.
And it's such a great invention, and it was actually the invention of the century. This Finnish lady, she came up with that concept that why dry the dishes before you put them in the cardboard if you can just let them dry in there. And this has no bottom, so it can just drip down on the sink. So yeah, really was saving a lot of time. Yeah. Then I was in university and I was passionate about snowboarding, and then I was building together with my friend in university this snowboard binding, which was a little modification, and we prototyped out of simple material like carpet material and some 3D printed plate, and all of a sudden it changed the behavior of the snowboard in a quite significant way. And that was something that we naturally did. And then we went snowboarding with a guy from Head Snowboards, and we were mounting our prototype under his binding. And instantly he felt how it changed the behavior of snowboard, and then he was sold. He said, guys, you don't even have to say anything anymore, this is like super good. We want to integrate this, and then they purchased the patent and so on and so on. It took a while until it was integrated, but it was launched then as a premium binding. So still today, when I'm snowboarding, for example, in Japan, I see people with the snowboard binding. That was an eye-opening start of my study. Just seeing how a prototype, an idea can become something real, and that was what it's all about. Didn't pay much, then no. So at University of Stanford, I was learning a lot from Larry Leifer, who retired sadly this year. But he was teaching the students about dancing with ambiguity and was so eye-opening, had this Silicon Valley spirit. And he was the godfather basically of design thinking in starting the program at the mechanical engineering course, teaching engineers about empathy they should have for their users when they are creating a product or like an invention. And that's something they were lacking before. They would build killer machines if they can, just because they can, but they should think about what is the problem we want to solve in this world. Why? Who are we building for? So this was a fantastic environment. We run many student teams every year, and they were building for 10 months innovation for one of the corporate sponsors. And what I basically just learned in every project was like, it's okay to not have all the answers from this very start. This is something I had to learn, something that the students had to learn to understand. You don't look stupid if you say, I don't know right now, but we can find it out. Let's find it out together. So this is the right attitude. We live in a complex world. Nobody has all the answers. And if they have, then they are probably just pretending. And thinking. Then what they teach you in B school is that you have all the answers right away and that you make smart choices. But what they teach you in D school is basically to diverge once before you create more problems before you figure out the solutions. So this can be quite annoying, but this is the mindset that we as designers have very much and we bring into each kind of project. Are we asking the right questions, right? And yeah, you can see a picture how we were teaching actually also business students about getting their hands dirty and start prototyping with this paper bike exercise. Every student had to go through this in the beginning, and they had to, instead of building the innovation right away for their sponsor company, they had to build paper bikes that they competed on the game day with the other teams. And the teams that were actually prototyping a lot and testing, they were rewarded because their bikes wouldn't break right away. And this is what it was all about. The Goodpatch story, who knows Goodpatch in this room? Yeah, I also heard you're helping us to recruit these days, so thank you very much. The Goodpatch is a Japanese firm, and we expanded also to Europe over 7 years ago. That's why I went back to Germany, and we have now like 250 employees, plus another network of 400 kind of freelance designers. They're on contract base with us. The trend is also growing in Japan. And people also know us because of the IPO that we did in 2020, and we work with a lot of different kind of companies together. Can be startups or big companies. And yeah, then now Fumitsuchi is the founder, and he went to Silicon Valley in 2011, and he came back with the understanding that user experience was so much more emphasized over there in Silicon Valley. Companies like Instagram and Uber and Twitter and so on, they all came up around that time. And what happened was that the iPhone became really big in Japan as well, and companies in Japan didn't know how to build apps yet. Every smartphone had, or even Ketais had the mobile internet, but then the apps from the iPhone, they changed everything. So these were more supposed to be designed like products and less like websites. And people needed to figure that out. We built Gunosi back in the day, the design for Gunosi, which was a student startup. And people were saying, this must be an American app, this cannot be a Japanese app. But then they found out it's a Japanese app. That Gunosi founders, they couldn't pay Goodpatch in the beginning because it was just a student startup. But then they paid us with basically just always shouting out our name and giving us good PR. And that was the starting point for our company. And then 2020 was the IPO, one of the first IPOs after like COVID kind of like shock. And it was important for us because we wanted to introduce design to a broader audience, wanted to show what can design do for business. We still have to prove the power of design. Also now succeeding on the stock market, which is just basically, people are watching us. How is a design company really doing business-wise? And this is what we are working on now. And we have many different products over the years. What happens is that we are able to understand the process behind building successful products. We contain that knowledge, that know-how, and bring that with us to each project. That know-how of building over 100 products over the years. Can be different industries. So as designers, we can always say yes to the challenge. The bigger the challenge, the more motivating it is actually for designers. And we don't need to be domain experts because we are working closely connected with the client teams who are then the domain experts, and we bring the design process. And what we mostly do is we quickly turn ideas into tangible prototypes. We have even built our own prototyping tool, Prot, for that, and this is how we are working, and that's how we produce quick results. Then not just the agency work, client partner business, but we also have platforms. So we have built Prot and Strap and Redesigner, also a hiring platform. Strap is like a collaboration tool, Prot is a prototyping tool. So different kind of businesses around our core business of client services. And actually people know that Goodpatch has Berlin and Tokyo. Last week, I don't know if anybody of you is also checking investor updates, but we have announced that we're going to shut down Berlin, which was a super sad news. Also for me personally, I've been building that up over the last 7 years, but we had to make that. So the business situation in Europe is very tough these days, especially in Germany. And the companies are all forced to save costs, and they save it on agency services. So after the first shock 2 years ago with COVID, we recovered from that. Then we had to basically to deal with the situation with Ukraine war beginning of the year. And now Germany is in a tough situation. Yeah, so it was. I was last week in Berlin and talked to all the members, and it was a very tough decision. But it's also part of business, and it's part of the ever-evolving journey. Yeah. It's public now, so you can also read about it. But it's really a tough call. But what's next? So a few topics that are going on these days in our world is definitely the topic around venture design. And then it's just a natural progression. So before we help companies to design digital products, now it's going to be more about helping to design digital business models. And the designers are also much more involved in these business aspects. We have also design strategists who are basically consultants and working closely with management. So this is all connected these days. And what happens is that you are making that idea to prototype, but then you are concentrating on finding product market fit. After finding problem solution fit, you cannot skip any of these steps. Then you find product market fit, you validate, and then you find business model fit. And it's a bit wide here, but what happened is that this is an evolution of the venture building model which came from Silicon Valley and established over the years. And now you have companies also like BCG, Digital Ventures, Bridgemaker, Goodpatch, Uplus, who are doing a lot of corporate venture building. And this is the evolution from the first venture builders or company builders from Silicon Valley and Rocket Internet and so on. Yeah, then a lot of things to cover. We have just recently built a joint venture with Marui Group. It's all about like supporting companies with DX. What is DX? from my point of view, it's very much helping companies to be agile as startups, fast as startups, to develop a work culture like startups, and companies sometimes have to even create new companies to enable such place where they can hire good talent and build great products. Planet-centric design is another topic that we learned very much to push forward in Berlin. The question is basically, can we find another way of, besides money, to measure value? And its impact, and it's a triple bottom line, so you are not just thinking about society and profit, but also about the planet, and this is very much important in Europe. The consciousness is there. Also, a lot of things are happening here in Japan, but I can tell you the next generation of employees will be very demanding for that. They don't want to work on anything else than something meaningful, and they want to work for planet-conscious companies and impact companies, and these companies are hiring the best people these days. And then talking about human-centered design and how that was really developed over the last years, and companies finally understood that. Now there's the next thing, that's the planet-centric design. It's not anti-human, but it's a natural progression, and it includes more stakeholders than just the human or just the user. And this is an interesting shift going on these days. So here's in this ladder here, kind of step by step, you see how we develop from the technology focus to the business focus, bubble economy, and then human side, with companies like IDEO pushing this forward, and now you have that kind of era. And now one topic that I want to just provide you additional value is the topic around localizing UX UI. And I'm not going to be able to cover all, but I also have a link for a white paper that is covering the topic in detail. You can download it for free. But you see some examples. Starbucks, for example, how that digital product looks in Germany, then in Japan. You cannot see it so well, but you also see companies like IKEA or Nitori, the Japanese competitor of IKEA, and how these websites look very differently. You're going to see the white paper later, so you can just have a look in detail. It's quite wide here. But the general, conception is that Japanese websites have a lot of information, and there's definitely some true points about that. But I want to give you a little bit more than that, and I want to give you a framework to look at these things. And you have what I showed you earlier, what design is all about, not just the surface level, but also the structure and the actual concept, the strategy is also visible here. So I want you to think about localization in terms of 3 layers. And you're going to start from the visual, typography, tone of voice, colors, and so on. But then you have the structure, the information architecture, wireframes, and so on. Then you have the concept. So what is the product all about? For who? How does it work? And you can also look at it from what is culturally influenced. Is the motivation a cultural one, or is it a contextual one? So some things, contextual is like some things you cannot just change. For example, the way numbers are written or the way dates are written is just different, so it's just gonna follow that context. Cultural is like more soft factors. Okay, but then some more examples to make that more concrete. One thing that even surprised me was that the PlayStation button changed over the years. It was always a different design overseas and in Japan. As the circle, the maru means something different in Japan than it would mean overseas, and only with PS5 they actually made the same design. Maybe it was established enough at that point. But you also see that, for example, in Adobe programs, that Japanese versions still have the circle instead of IKEA. Check mark. Then this is an example for cultural and for the visual. Some more examples. I, for example, would call it stamps in Japan, but stickers overseas. And one example along that lines that I like very much was from LinkedIn a few years ago, when they first introduced LinkedIn. It felt so harsh for people to say no to a friend request on LinkedIn. So the first version of the Japanese LinkedIn was like Atode. This was I think a very great cultural example. Or then an example for the composition of information. So you see an example of Muji, German website, very visual and somewhat making it a bit ambiguous what's gonna come after you click somewhere. Just making you maybe curious, but not showing you all the information, while the Japanese Muji website has it all written out and just gives you upfront the information what you're going to find after you click it there. And a client we worked with, helping them to launch in Japan, was Hello Fresh, and that was really interesting also through the process. In Germany, the emphasis was on the message, we are fast and you save time and this is convenient for you. In Japan, it was like, there were many other competitors. So the way to stand out was like, hey, we are like helping you to cook something international, like some international dish. And that was the value proposition for the market entry. And then you have, as a conclusion, you have the Apple website, and this shows just like, you can acknowledge and utilize cultural differences, but how much you're gonna go with it, with that know-how, is up to you. So it can be even a conscious decision to say, we're not gonna modify the product, we're gonna keep it as it is elsewhere, and that can make the appeal of being a very global brand, for example. So that is a conscious decision, and Apple goes with it, but this is up to you, I think, and you can decide. But you should maybe, if it can help you to structure the thinking, you can apply this framework and make your own decisions. And then 5 things to remember. Mind the power of the prototype. Get things haptic really quickly. Ideas are not real, prototypes are real. You can really do a lot to convince stakeholders, customers or investors or managers. Show them something that you built. Keep your creative confidence and don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Make others successful, so understand business goals, also as a designer. And then the shift from human-centered to planet-centric is interesting, and I think of localization as a framework and as a choice. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you.